Alright, let's make some games. Wait. What is this? Oh my god. Oh, what day is it? What happened? I better get back into it. 2 weeks ago, in the last video, I talked about this epic map generation, which was the first priority on my to-do list. And it is a thing on my to-do list. But things didn't really go as planned. I got sidetracked. I'm working on this sci-fi adventure called Subject XYZ. It's a first-person shooter with roguelike elements. I'm posting devlogs about the development, so make sure you subscribe, ring the bell, and like the video if you enjoy it. Let's get back into the video. Well, first of all, yes, maps are important. In the last video we looked into creating an enemy, my balls on 4 legs, remember? Which was a great success. I was totally in a groovy flow, so I continued working on the enemy. Before you say, hey, that's not what you said you were gonna work on, let me explain. I'm working towards a playable prototype, which is the minimum of features needed to create a good gaming experience. I'll need that for feedback and get an overview about what the game might look like. My idea is that the game will consist of 3 main pillars: the player, the enemies, and the environment. Under each pillar there are more aspects, smaller aspects, but that's the general idea and that's what I need to make the game work. They all work together and I need all 3 pillars. If one is missing, the game doesn't really work. So it doesn't really matter if I work on the enemies now or if I do that after the maps. However, I'm also human and I kind of went down a rabbit hole here. It started with that I wanted to play some games. Research some games. I played a bunch and learned what features they had and what worked for them. I get inspired by other games, and sometimes I found some flaws that I do not want in my own game. For example, Battlefield 5 have a great single player campaign, but the difficulty is very inconsistent and the enemies can spawn out of nowhere when you try to flank. It's the same in Battlefront 2, and that's something I really want to avoid. After playing, I started working on AI. I wanted them to shoot lasers, but I remembered that the projectiles weren't really there. It was just a ray I cast into the space, and when it hits something, it damages the object. So I needed some projectiles. I worked on the projectiles because I just couldn't have ugly projectile spheres, so I needed to do some graphics for those. They needed to look at least a little bit cool. However, I noticed that the decals, which are the laser holes on the wall, didn't really want to do as I wanted. The glowy part after the shot wasn't able to be animated. So I had to do a workaround, which resulted in glowy floating parts when I hit something that could move. But I decided just to move on and save that problem for future Danish. I'm starting to feel like I'm getting a bit off topic here. I suddenly got an idea for a video that showcases new prisoners how to behave. I just had to write the script for that before I could move on, because otherwise I would just forget, so it was really important that I wrote that down. After a week, I finally felt like I could start working on the AI itself for the enemies. I was supposed to work on map generation, but if it doesn't have any enemies working around in them, it doesn't really matter, right? Right? So I ended up researching some destruction because I needed that for the levels. I just needed to know what I could do with destruction. Look how cool this looks. Look at it. This would be super cool in the game. However, I can't keep going down this route. Man, I need to focus. I realized that the enemies needed a lot more work than I initially anticipated. I did get them to move around the map. They can now spot the player and shoot at us. I also implemented a health system so both the player and the enemies can die. It's just some basic systems to get to the playable prototype. I needed some indication of when the player dies and when the enemies dies, so I worked on that as well. This will need more work once we get the enemies walking around the map. In the last video I asked if you could help me come up with some names for prisoners. I realized that nicknames are way more important than the first and last name. So did some of you. I quickly put together this name generator. You can try to pause the video now and see what your prisoner name would be. I also added a hobby section. Once again, I need your inputs on what could be fun interests or hobbies for the prisoners. Their cell in the game will be decorated with it. It could be an artist who likes to draw other prisoners. I'm also still looking for names, so if you got any, let me know. Comment below. In conclusion, you could argue that I wasted my time doing these things, but I don't think so, and I'm quite happy with how productive I was these 2 weeks. I did work on different aspects of the game, and they weren't equally as important, all of them. So maybe some of them weren't the highest priority, but I did find a lot of joy working on these aspects, and it's supposed to be fun in the end. I'm really happy with the progress that I made, and the next video, maps. Or yeah, for sure I'm gonna work on maps. Maybe, yeah, maybe. If you liked this video, you should check out some of the other videos that I made. I have a bunch of devlogs, and I also have videos about game development and creativity in general. Take care, gamers!